Hey guys, welcome to the very first edition of the GoCast podcast. So this is basically a podcast which is collaboratively made by GameFX and GoFloaters. So we have the founder of GoFloaters on the first episode, Mr. Shyam Sundar Nagarajan. How are you doing, man?
Hey, happy to be here. I'm doing pretty well. Obviously, a bit down from the situation in terms of COVID and all that, but otherwise pretty upbeat, pretty excited. Thank you for hosting us on your one of your first podcasts.
Yep. So the topics we'll be like taking a look at today is entrepreneurship, like GoFloaters, raising capital, bootstrapping, and
Hmm.
so like without any further ado, let's like jump right into it.
Absolutely, go for it.
So, to give a bit of context to the audience, how would you explain to a 10-year-old what is Go Floaters?
Good, interesting way to put it, right? So for a 10-year-old, by the time the 10-year-old becomes a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old, go floaters is what work would mean to him or her, right? So in the sense, today our work is getting distributed, our
Mm-hmm.
work is getting happening from all across the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for a 10-year-old, the office as it looks today looks so boring, looks so old, archaic, right? It's a remnant from the industrial era where factory workers would assemble in a building and then do their own mechanical work and then go back home, right? So that's not a 10-year-old's
Mm-hmm.
version of an office, right? 10-year-old version of an office is something that's fun, something that's on demand in the sense that whenever he or she is in a mood to work, they should they should be able to work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not a 9 to 5 person, I don't need to be behind closed doors from 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for a 10-year-old, or for the matter any millennial who's out there, we are building the office for the millennial, right? Or we're building
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
workspace for the millennial, where the workspace floats with them, the
Mm-hmm.
workspace flexibly adjusts to their aspirations, adjusts to their
Yeah.
work schedule, adjust to their type of working and way of working, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this world has been very cookie cutter in the last 70, 80 years, where it has
Yeah. Yeah.
built
Mm-hmm.
things of one type, assuming that everybody fits into that mold, right? So our
Mm-hmm.
offices all look the same, from not just from the outside but also from the inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you and me are not the same, right? Your workspace needs to be different from my workspace, right? The Where I feel comfortable working
Mm-hmm.
uh, has to be different from where you feel. I mean, hey, we don't eat the same food,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we don't wear the same kind of clothes, right? Why should we work in the same kind of an office, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's basically the fundamental question that we actually wanted to address, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that and just take this current situation, right? And I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we are talking across I mean, miles and miles, and just connected by technology in between, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way work is going to be, right? And no longer people need to be rubbing shoulders with each other in the same office, in the same cubicle. uh, Work is still going to happen across miles and across boundaries and across geographical limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the kind of workspace that's going to be as omnipresent as our
Yeah.
work is going to be in the future? That's basically what GoFloaters is.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of put it in a nutshell, we are an on-demand workspace platform
Mm-hmm.
which helps individuals and small teams get access to affordable, flexible, on-demand spaces for work and meetings. That's basically what GoFlows is.
Like great points put forth, and like I really wanted to ask, like, what is like the revenue model of Go Floaters?
Okay. So we are a completely light asset model, right? So we are what if I have to take again to make it clearer for people, if I have to take
Mm-hmm.
an analogy, if you are familiar with something like an Airbnb, right? So
Yeah.
we are Airbnb for workspaces, right? So it's a completely
Mm-hmm.
shared economy model, right? Uh, why should I mean if you take any office building, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's enough excess capacity in that building to accommodate one or two more companies inside that, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
why build one more extra square feet of commercial real estate when existing capacity can address most of the office space needs or workspace needs for people, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
basically what we do, right? So uh, we take excess capacity, underutilized capacity from
Mm-hmm.
businesses that have that, and open them up, unlock the potential of these spaces, and make it available to other people who are looking for such spaces, right? So we are that platform that bridges the gap here, right? And our
Mm-hmm.
revenue model is on a revenue share basis, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we are a light asset model. We don't have costs per se with respect to real estate. So the way we do is like we
Mm-hmm.
front end the entire process for the customer, from a discovery, from a exploration, from a booking, from a payment standpoint, and
Okay.
we then take our revenue cut and pass on the
Mm-hmm.
line share of that to our partners. So basically, that's basically how we make money, and we help
Mm-hmm.
people who have excess capacity make money from something that was otherwise going
Mm-hmm.
waste.
Okay, so like I guess the audience must be like really familiar with what GoFloaters actually is. So I really wanted to ask you, being an entrepreneur right now, how was your
Right.
life before GoFloaters? What were you doing?
Okay, so I'm a product of uh, the corporate world, right? So I've
Mm-hmm.
spent literally over 18 and a half years working for IT MNCs prior to becoming an entrepreneur. So spent like, to give you a brief,
Mm-hmm.
I spent around 4.5 years with Infosys, another 14 and a half years with Cognizant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I did multiple roles as primarily a technologist, solving business problems using technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my last couple of roles at Cognizant were to kind of imagine the future of insurance, right? So I was also working within the insurance domain, and I was an architect within that insurance domain. So I was kind of
Okay.
tasked with
Mm-hmm.
many things to kind of solve complex business problems using technologies. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I really honed my skills at,
Mm-hmm.
and fortunately also got an opportunity within Cognizant to build a product from scratch, uh, uh, and market it, sell it to a potential customer. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
before jumping into entrepreneurship, I did get a little bit of entrepreneurial experience
Mm-hmm.
inside Cognizant. So it's called entrepreneurship, right? So that kind of built my confidence enough to kind of look at a world beyond the corporate structure, and uh, I mean help me, I mean, or encourage me to try my own hand trying to build a business from scratch.
Great. Like, so taking spirituality into context, like most of the entrepreneurs get an inner calling first and then they switch over to their actual entrepreneurial journey. Was there any sort of inner calling that made you switch from a corporate job to a startup?
Absolutely. I think that's, I don't know if it's a universal truth, but I think without an inner calling, if you're just doing this for just the title of a CEO, or just to call yourself a founder of a company, that's not going to work
Mm-hmm.
for too long, right? So if you didn't have the if an entrepreneur did not get have an intern, I mean, inner calling, or if they didn't have a purpose strong enough for them to jump the ship and do something all by themselves, right? I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
journey is not going to last for long, right? To I mean, I had the inner calling for quite some time, in the sense that,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, right, I was always drawn towards solving business problems using technology, right? So, and I had enough opportunities within my corporate world to be able to do that. So if I had if I my journey at Cognizant was not interesting, I would have probably become an entrepreneur way ahead of, I mean, I wouldn't have waited for
Mm-hmm.
18 years to become an entrepreneur. But my journey at Cognizant was so interesting that I was able I was given I had a lot of opportunities to work with the best minds in the world to kind of solve complex problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kept me going for quite some time. But then there's always the rubber meeting the road was always missing for me,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that uh, uh, I I couldn't relate to the person. I mean, I in a lot of cases I would solve the problem, but I wouldn't even know whom I'm solving it for. Right? Who is the
Mm-hmm.
actual user? Right? Where is that user? That user might be in Philippines. That user might be in North America. That user might be in Mauritius. But I've not ever
Mm-hmm.
seen him or her, so I was not able to relate to them, and I was not able to talk to them literally
Mm-hmm.
speaking and say, hey, I built this software for you, was this useful for you, right? Did it solve your
Yeah.
problem, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
am I just assuming that it solved your problem, right? So that became that gap between the solution and the problem, right? Persisted long enough for me to get frustrated with it, right? So because
Mm-hmm.
in a corporate world, right, you only get to so many levels of, you have to go through so many levels of hierarchy to actually even talk to a proxy user, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forget about the real user of whatever you're building. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of was bothering me, right? But I would say there were two very significant points
Mm-hmm.
in my career that kind of changed, that kind of made me decide for certain that I have to be an entrepreneur, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the first first incident was in 2014. I got selected as a Fulbright scholar, right? I was in the US spending around 3.5 months, again with best of the minds across the world from various uh, from various businesses, from various uh, uh, departments and all that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we were also exposed to a lot of the startup culture and the startup ecosystem in the US, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of, when I got to look at people solving very interesting problems, people so passionate about what they
Mm-hmm.
personally believe in and what they want to do with their lives. So I thought, like, hey, what am I doing here, right? I should also be doing something like this, right? Why am I solving for a person's problem I've never ever met in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
and have this kind of a challenge, right? That was my first point in time where the inner calling got
Mm-hmm.
amplified, right? So the second tipping point for me was a series of natural calamities that happened in Chennai, right? So right around 2014 to 2017, right? Chennai was hit by multiple calamities, including the tsunami, including the floods that happened, and then tsunami was much earlier, but then floods happened later, and then we had a big storm the next season, right? And being a guy from an insurance background and a technology background, what I was seeing is like how people, and more specifically how businesses were suffering and how they were closing down because there was no way for them to recover from that, and not having insurance did not help them at all, right? So and with my background in insurance and with my background in technology, I said, hey, I can solve this for India, right? And more specifically for Chennai, because this is a city that I have grown my all my years, spent years I've spent here, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
can't solve the problem that is close to me, that I can see for myself with my own eyes, right? What am I here trying to solve a problem for a customer or a person who I ever never met
Mm-hmm.
ever in my life, right? So that's basically, so these multiple events that happened from 2014 till 2017 uh, were kind of the events that amplified my inner calling
Mm-hmm.
to kind of jump the ship from a corporate world and to explore entrepreneurship.
Great. So like the dots just connected and that led you to the path of GoFloaters, right? So I really wanted to ask this thing because you have like great amount of experience in corporate world and like great amount of experience in startup world. Like taking these both things into the picture, what are the key differences and what are the advantages of being an entrepreneur and the disadvantages of being an entrepreneur?
Sure. See, the uh, being a corporate employee, irrespective of where you are in the position of the hierarchy, and being an entrepreneur, are, while there are commonalities, while you have to deal with a team, you have to manage a team, you have to manage goals, you have to manage a project plan, and stuff like that, right? So a lot of commonalities that are there. I was into technology, so I was building products even while I was working at Cognizant. So here also we're building a product, the technology platform of GoFloaters. So there's a lot of commonalities there. Obviously, a lot of those things that I learned, I kind of imbibed while being in a corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
have helped me certainly with entrepreneurship in general, right? And the fact that you've worked so much, you have so much more confidence that, hey, you can do something, right, with your with not just your own life, but you can also be accountable for so many other people who believe in your vision, right? So all of these things help, right? And certainly having a stable bank balance does help, right?
Mm-hmm.
While you start on an entrepreneurial journey, right? So all of that, I would say, were plus points for me coming into entrepreneurship after spending 18 odd years in a corporate, having a job, and doing certain things with that job, right? But apart from that, to be frank enough, I had pretty
Mm-hmm.
hard time in the first 6 months adjusting into an entrepreneurial role, right? A lot of things, right? And the world outside is not a forgiving world, right? So when I say that, my pedigree or my experience or my
Mm-hmm.
degrees that I have behind my name doesn't matter to uh, the world outside, right? The world outside only wants you to tell them, hey, I'm offering this. This is the value of this, and this is at what I'm going to charge you for this. And if they still see that as valuable, they're going
Mhm.
to take it, right? And you have to obviously do it in a very convincing way, right? So the world outside doesn't care what your pedigree was, right? So it actually, and being an entrepreneur, you're kind of in a corporate world, right? You have a
Mhm.
lot of safety nets, right? So you don't fall too much. If you fall, you just fall like a few feet, and then there's somebody to hold you up and then bring you back up to the level that you were before, right? And there's a lot of support systems, right? I mean, if I needed some help, I have the
Mhm.
admin department, I have the finance department, I have the marketing department, I have the HR department, I have like so many people who are ready to offer their services for my mission, right? To help me accomplish my mission, or to help me accomplish indirectly the customer's mission. I have
Mhm.
so many things that support, that are offering support to me to be able to deliver my job, right? But as an entrepreneur, you have to do deal with all of this yourself, right? I mean, so so from a person
Mhm.
within a system to a person outside the system, where you're doing this all by yourself, is a drastic change, right? So it definitely took me like a little over 6 months to kind of adjust myself, to reorient myself, to come
Mhm.
to terms with entrepreneurship and say, hey, yes, this is the real world, right? This is, you can't expect entrepreneurship to be a better process, right? Not just the
Yeah.
6 months, but forever, right? I mean, you can't expect it to, you can't take it for granted, right? And
Mhm.
you can't say, hey, okay, I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow, right? You can't postpone, procrastinate things, because time is the real truth teller in an entrepreneurial world, right? If you don't deliver value within a particular time,
Mhm.
you're not going to get what you want from the market, right? So you have to really be on the toes, really be innovative on a daily basis, right? You have to be flexible, you have to be on the feet, you have to be nimble enough to change to the expect excuse me, change to the expectations of the customers,
Mhm.
kind of be a lot more ears on the ground, right? And you have to keep your ears on the ground, constantly listen to signals that are
Mhm.
coming back to you, right? You can't assume things and say, hey, it's either my way or a highway, right? You can't do that, right?
Yeah.
You are building
Mhm.
something for somebody, and you have to be responsive, you have to be responsible, you have to be responsive, you have to be nimble, agile, all of it, right? So though a lot of it is a big transition for me. I'm
Mhm.
sure it's a transition for anybody who does entrepreneurship, but having been soaked into the corporate world
Mhm.
of 18 years, right? So it took a little longer for me to kind of get adjusted to the entrepreneurial journey, right?
Mhm.
But I don't say this with any sense of how do I say it? I don't repent doing that decision, right? So all of
Yeah.
this I enjoyed. It was obviously tough when I was faced with such things,
Mhm.
but the learning that I got from that makes it worthy enough of going through
Yeah.
all those, the turmoil and the
Mhm.
challenges and the unlearning, learning, and all that. It's kind of worth it when you kind of look back at it and then see it, right?
Great.
And then you
Mhm.
asked me about advantages and disadvantages, right?
Yeah.
So talking about advantages, right? So I think the biggest advantage of being an entrepreneur is to be able to uh, kind of uh, take on a problem that's really close to your heart, right?
Yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
it's a problem that you personally associate with, right? And GoFloaters itself, right? And I'll probably talk about this later, but GoFloaters was, I built GoFloaters because the problem that GoFloaters was trying to solve for is my problem. I was having the
Mhm.
problem, right? So like, if you're hungry, you cook for yourself and you eat, right? But if you don't have a spouse to cook for you, you don't have a mother to cook for you, you probably go down to the store, get a pack of Maggie and cook for yourself, right? So kind of solve the problem for yourself first, right? Then
Mhm.
you can start serving to others, right? And similarly, GoFloaters was my problem, right? So when you solve it for yourself, right, it kind of, you relate to that problem so much more, so much that you're able to kind of solve it with a lot of passion, solve it with a
Mhm.
lot of interest, and solve it with a lot of vested interests, right? So that's the biggest advantage that an entrepreneur has, right? An entrepreneur is not forced to solve a problem that he or she does not relate to, right?
Mhm.
um, I mean, that's, and the sense of achievement that you get and the sense of accomplishment that you get from doing that is just not
Mhm.
measurable. You can't measure it, right? So that I would say is the biggest advantage, right? The second biggest advantage I would say is like, um, there are no red tapes, right? You don't have to wait for anybody to give you a green signal, right? You don't have to wait for any, your boss, or you don't have to wait for a process to kind of tell you or bless you to do something, right? So
Mhm.
you decide what you're going to do for the next 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
You decide
Mm-hmm.
what. I mean, I'm not saying this. I mean, it's probably, it can be misconstrued as saying that you're on your own boss, right? But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not actually true. The customer is your boss if you're an entrepreneur. But all I'm saying is that if you have a mission, right, and
Mm-hmm.
you have a vision, and then you have a mission from that, how you accomplish this is in complete, you're in complete control of that, right? There are
Yeah.
no there are no other external factors that are going to kind of put constraints on what you have to do the
Mm-hmm.
next 24 hours, what you do with your time, right? It's completely your time, right? And obviously you have to make the best out of it, right? So today, if I decide to do so, for example, without
Mm-hmm.
going to a lot of details, so today, being the first day of the lockdown, we decided to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a marketing standpoint, from a customer reach out standpoint, we decided at 4 o'clock, and it's already live at 8 p.m., right? So you can take decisions on the fly, you can execute on it on the fly, right? And you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
I mean, worry about something, right? So that's the second point, I would say, right? The third point is the fact that you get to solve a problem, and also see the part that like I said earlier, right? My biggest
Mm-hmm.
concern or biggest gap with respect to my corporate world was that I couldn't see if the solution that I created really solved somebody's problem or not, right? Because I'm too far away from the actual end user who's using my software
Mm-hmm.
solution, right?
Yeah.
But here I can see that, hey, it's almost like a chef serving to people dining at the restaurant, right? If you take the dish out, you put it out in front of customers, they eat and they tell you the feedback right away, right? You don't
Great
have wait
analogy.
for a
Yes.
right,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have to wait for like a couple of years to know whether the food was liked by somebody or not, right? So that's and obviously you have to be, you can't, I mean, if you're the chef, right, you also have to be the person who's serving the guest, right? You can't sit in the kitchen and then ask the server for feedback, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
go there and serve the dish yourself to actually see the first spoonful go into the mouth of your customers, and the reactions that they have from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the loop gets closed so fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, the loop is not an indefinite loop, right? And there are very few uncertain parts in the loop, right? You do something, you can
Mm-hmm.
measure the outcome of it, if not in the next hour, you can certainly measure it in the next 24 hours, right? And then see, hey, did this work, right? If it didn't work, then you do something else, right? You tweak
Mm-hmm.
it to the left, or you tweak it to the right, and you're kind of constantly uh, uh, reinventing yourself,
Like pivoting the decision.
rate pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
Pivoting is a big word, but
Yeah.
kind of constantly making tweaks to it, right? You tighten one
Mm-hmm.
screw on the left, you tighten another screw on the right, and you constantly do that, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
sense of closure, right, is something that you get in entrepreneurship that you don't get in a typical job, right? You don't have a closure in most of the cases. You don't know, right? You created a
Mm-hmm.
document, you present it to somebody, right? But then you don't know, you don't have a closure sometimes, right? So the closure is very important, and you get that in entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
um, and then the last, I mean, there are tons of other things, but the
Mm-hmm.
last is to, you have a vision, right? And every entrepreneur, whether it's an individual or a group of people who come together to create a business or a startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the seed that they lay, right? But then to kind of help the seed grow, you have to assemble a team to kind of help you do that, right? So when it's a huge accomplishment when it's not just you who thinks that this crazy idea has a place in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but then there are other people who join you in the journey and say, hey, I like your crazy idea, right? I like what you're trying to build here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm personally interested in being a part of this journey, right? Add me in, I mean, take me into your team, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the kind of how do I say it, the kind of validation you get from that, right? When it's not just you, right? There are, I mean, just take GoFloaters for now. When I started GoFloaters, I was the only guy, right? But now we are a team of 16 uh, uh, employees, right? And
Mm-hmm.
16 core members who are actually part of that. So 15 other people have believed in GoFloaters, and they've become a part of
Mm-hmm.
this journey, right? What better validation can you get, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, when so many people are ready to put their own careers at, I wouldn't say at stake, but then they're ready to invest their time into a journey, right? That they feel a part of it, and they feel proud
Yeah.
to be a part of it. I mean, that's something that you
Like
when you
belief is
build something
everything.
from
Mm-hmm.
scratch and you create something, it's initially a small seed, and you see that
Mm-hmm.
grow and you see that blossom. I mean, I don't think so. You can meet. you can match that kind of accomplishment and kind of a sense of achievement with anything else that you could do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would say these are the advantages of being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, there are, yeah, disadvantages. I mean, you don't make money for the first few years, right? You
Yeah.
can't take
Mm-hmm.
take much home from that, right? A lot of times you go through a lot of situations where you start to doubt yourself, right? You start to doubt the idea. You start to there are a lot of troughs that you go through, right? It's
Yeah.
not a smooth sailing, and it's kind of you kind of and I'm not saying that uh, I'm not saying this to deter people from doing that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
hey, you wanted to ride the waves, right? If you can't expect us a still water, right, out there if you
Mm-hmm.
want to ride the waves, right? And you have to, if the thrill of riding the waves have to be there, then the water also has to, you have to go down to come up someday, right?
Yeah.
So so you do face a few of those situations where you kind of not in the best of your morale, but then
Mm-hmm.
you have to pull yourself from that, and then come out brighter, shinier the next day, and then
Yes. Yes.
go back at it. So there are a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things. Like I said earlier, the world is not a forgiving world. So if you're a startup, if you're not adding value to somebody, your idea is not going to go anywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be, there are a lot of no's you will hear, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
rejections that you'll see before you get the first yes, right? You get the first
Yeah.
customer to pay for the product or the service that you've built,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of, you go through a lot of rejections, you go through a lot of those tough times to be, and you kind of survive, kind of literally have to survive through all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
To kind of see the brighter part of being an entrepreneur, right? But
Yeah.
all said and done, I think it's all worth uh, all
Like
that
the
that you go
risk and
through is
stuff.
really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the game, right? And if you don't want to play the game, then stay out of the game, right? So
Yeah.
the moment you say I want to play the game of cricket, and you should be ready to take a few balls hitting your helmet or hitting your
Mm.
knees and all that. I mean, that's part of the game, right? You can't play it safe.
Yeah. Like great. I have like a lot of questions right now. Like you spoke about degrees and stuff and adding value. So I am like I heard a lot of people saying that recession will be kicking in soon, and like because of that and a permanent recession, that is automation coming in, a lot of people would be fired because of that, because like there are a lot of tools which help in sales and stuff. So what is your take on automation? Will it really take out jobs?
uh, the short answer is yes, right? But my counter question to all those people who fear this is like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this current situation is just accelerating all of it. It's going to just accelerate it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
never sealed or never protected from any of this before,
Mm-hmm.
also, right? So it's not that the recession is going to kind of uh, bring about a new future. It's just that the future has been fast forwarded, right?
Oh yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
right. So I mean, look at factories now, right? I mean, there are more
Mm-hmm.
robots than humans inside factories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and we are happy that that's happening, right? Otherwise, a test kit for COVID would probably take 3 days to manufacture with human hands, right? But then
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
factories are churning out like thousands of test kits in a day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so if automation was not there, right, none of us would be alive and doing this podcast, right? So that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's so
Mm-hmm.
so all I would say, like, the future has just gotten fast forwarded, right? I
Fast
mean,
forward. Mm-hmm.
so if you're not ready for it, uh, I mean, you had to you. I mean, any individual graduating out of college now, or any individual who's decided to become an entrepreneur now, or
Mm-hmm.
wants to decide to become an entrepreneur anytime in the future, I think if you were not prepared before, you should be prepared. I mean,
Yeah.
at a breakneck speed, right? Because I mean, you can't kind of say, "Hey, this is unfair," right? I mean, nothing is unfair. This is the game, right? I mean, you have to play the game, and that's the reality, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
face it, right? So I'm not trying to sugarcoat any of this, right? It is
Mm-hmm.
going to happen. Every industry has been hit by recession, right? Every but then there's always a silver lining
Yeah.
from anything and everything happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, right, if you switch on the TV now, right, I see 20 times more insurance ads on the TV than ever before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Every news channel has got insurance ad coming here and there, because everybody's fearing life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their own lives, right? and they're fearing what is going to happen to their families after if something happens to them, if they're hit, if the virus does catch on to them, right?
Yeah.
And now you have all life insurance companies advertising about their life insurance products, and they've
Mm-hmm.
seen the silver lining on this, right? So um, so I would, and we see a, I mean, frankly speaking, we see a silver lining for ourselves and go with this current situation
Mm-hmm.
for GoFloaters, right? So we see that the kind of on-demand workspaces that we offer is going to become the norm of the future, right? And I mean, and we were we were kind of from the top of the hill were shouting about go remote working, that's the future,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the future of working. We were kind of shouting from the top of the hill, but then people down below were said, hey, it's not for me, right? That's not me, right? The
Mm-hmm.
top of the hill is a narrow thing. You There are only few companies that can go remote, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
us, right? But today you take all the behemoths, all the so-called uh, very conservative companies are also
Mm-hmm.
being forced to go remote, right? There's no choice, right? And that's a reset. That's a way
Mm-hmm.
the work is going to be reset by that, right? So and which that's a silver lining for us, right? We see that what we would have otherwise taken years and years of marketing, of content
Mm-hmm.
marketing, of digital marketing, and education and
Mm-hmm.
awareness, right? One small virus has done it in a few days,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, I'm not I'm not saying this with a capitalistic note that hey, we're trying to make the best out of it, but then that's what you have to do, right? If you
Yeah.
have
That's the
to,
reality. Yeah.
right? That's a reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that's the other thing, right? So for everybody and anybody who's in any form of business, any form of journey, all
Mm-hmm.
right, would have to look for that silver lining from the situation, right? And look at for example, fintech companies, right? A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
would want to save more money than before, right?
Yeah.
A lot of money, a lot of people would want insurance more than ever before. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
companies would want commercial insurance than ever before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, a lot of people would look at different ways of working, right? Different ways of consumption patterns would change, right?
Yeah.
Different ways of saving money would come into play, right? Anyways, I mean, there's going to be like so many things that are going to change, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you can ride that wave, then you kind of emerge a
Mm-hmm.
winner, right? If you kind of brood over it and say, hey, it's like that book, right? Who moved my cheese, right? You can be
Yeah.
the rat who kind of complains saying that the cheese got moved, or you could kind of uh, uh, follow the cheese and follow the money and go there.
Like upgrading yourself constantly so that you can combat that automation so that you like the person, the individual doesn't become irrelevant in the future.
S- exactly, and you don't have to see automation as an enemy, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you could be that person who's in that economy of automation, right?
Yeah.
You could actually ride the wave. If you're a mechanical engineer, you
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
probably have a job being a mechatronics guy and building robots, or building softwares
Mm-hmm.
for robots, or building automation for robots, or building
Yeah.
analysis for that, and or IoT. I mean, so many opportunities. So IoT, for example, would have taken years and years for it to become mainstream, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about home automation, but I'm talking about industrial automation, right?
Industrial. Okay.
It would have taken years and years to happen, but it's all going to be all going to be accelerated, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a mechanical engineer, computer science engineer, you're an electronics engineer, you're an instrumentation engineer, you
Mm-hmm.
have to ride that wave, right? If you kind of stay there, say, hey, nah, I was an internal combustion engine guy, or I was a chemical engineer, and
Mm-hmm.
my world has changed. I don't know what to do. I mean, sorry. I mean, so I mean, you have to figure out a way to be a part of the change, right? Otherwise, the change is
Yeah.
going to take over, and you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, like because like if I take even my example, so there are like a lot of softwares like Foxbound is one, there's one like Rocket Reach which helps in sales and that like saves a lot of money as well and you don't need people to hire like sales employees are a bit more
Yeah,
expensive, right? But
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, and there's software that like that costs like a fraction of the salary, right? So that accelerates the workflow and also I guess that's more relevant now these days because people don't have the time to interact with a salesperson. They just check an email, they're like, okay, this seems good, and they
right.
apply for that partnership, right?
Absolutely. So multiple, yeah. So I think that's an awesome example, right, of how AI and software based automation can transform every startups or every business's
Mm-hmm.
different aspects of the business, right? So sales, finance, HR, a lot of, I mean, there's this like automated recruitment softwares that are out there, right, that do the
Mm-hmm.
pre-screening of candidates and match the profile of the candidate to the
Yeah, yeah.
job, match the do a psychographic analysis of the candidate and match it to the values of the company, and so on and so forth, right? And the kind of is just like just unimaginable a few years back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been unimaginable for companies to kind of bet their recruitment on such software before, right? But
Mm-hmm.
today they don't have a choice. They'll
Yeah.
have to embrace that, right? And they have to test it out, and then see it if it fits them, right? And if you are
Mm-hmm.
that person creating that software, right, then great, you can ride the wave.
Like even if we take examples of like most of the things right now, everything is just like changing up, because like let's say 7 years ago, 8 years ago, nobody knew that TV would be replaced by something like a Netflix or Amazon Prime, right? People
Mhm.
thought that that would be the most mainstream form of entertainment, but now like tables have turned. Like Netflix is like going high right now. It's like great, it's doing great, and at the time of this, lockdown, it's like doing great. But TVs on the other hand, it's not doing that well, and I guess like TVs will like disappear in the next coming 20 years. So this is also like sort of a form of automation, I believe. A change which
See,
makes,
that's a
some things irrelevant.
technology, that's a technology
Mm-hmm.
curve, right? So every
Yeah.
technology has a curve, right? So I mean, you don't, I mean, for example, you can't expect I mean, computing has changed, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
technology has got a curve, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
kind of, if you want to milk the same cow, right? If I have to take another analogy, it's not going to last for long, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to jump the curve, right? The only those people who jump the curve
Mm-hmm.
and make the transition to the new curve, right? So I mean, look at, I mean, again, I'll take the same example, right? Airtel was one of the very strong voices that was
Mm-hmm.
complaining about WhatsApp making voice calls, enabling voice calls over OTT apps
Mm-hmm.
like WhatsApp and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a choice, right? Now Airtel is more a digital company with Airtel Extreme and with all their
Yeah.
OTT services than they're not a cable or a DTH provider any longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, I mean, you can't complain and you can't say, hey, the world is changing, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
unfair for the world to change, right? And it's never unfair for the world to change. The world is going
Yeah.
to change how much ever how much ever you wish it didn't, right?
Yeah.
It's going to change anyways.
It's like then when a new like alternative comes, it makes the people like them. It makes the people believe that the previous one was a problem. So that also
Yeah, right.
like a lot of examples of that as well. So like moving on to like the next question, so you also said
Sure.
that like people believing in you and stuff, that's very important in a startup. And so I
Mhm.
believe like the people I've interacted with, they say having a good co-founder is really important. Like what's your take on this, and like how do you get co-founders, because it's like really difficult nowadays to get good people, and matching the insecurities and stuff. Like if I'm good at tech and the person is good at finance, that's a good match, but
Right.
that's very
Right.
difficult. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I kind of when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I kind of didn't believe that I needed a co-founder, right? Because I kind of was of the opinion that, hey, this is my passion, my interest to solve something,
Mm-hmm.
right? I might not find somebody who's equally passionate about solving this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me kind of do this by myself, right? So, uh, and more importantly, I didn't want to risk somebody else's career
Yeah.
for my crazy dream, right? So, so I didn't initially was not pro uh, out. I mean, getting out there frantically
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a co-founder, right? But then enough number of advisors, mentors, well-wishers kind of I mean kind of how do I say it, set the reality in my
Mm-hmm.
frame of thinking, in the sense that, hey, entrepreneurial journey is not a short lived one, right? It's a long journey. There's going to be lot many downs than ups that are
Mm-hmm.
you're going to face, right? You need somebody to kind of, so when you're down, you need somebody else to be able to pick it up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
pick up the overall morale of the team, or morale of the
Mm-hmm.
company. Or you need I mean, you can't be doing all by yourself, right? You need somebody to be to kind of divide the work with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of shoulder to kind of be at the same level and manage things along with you, right? So kind of you have to divide and conquer, and you need somebody to give you moral support. You need somebody else to
Mm-hmm.
give you you need somebody else to bounce back your ideas on, right? So otherwise, sometimes you might just carried away by your own idea, right? But only when you kind of
Mm-hmm.
verbalize your idea or verbalize your strategy and tell it to somebody, and hear that feedback from them, is when
Mm-hmm.
you get better, right? So obviously two is better than one in terms of, I
Yeah.
mean, two brains is better than one brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a lot more decisions made uh, uh, using factual data, using
Mm-hmm.
logical thinking, than something that's going to be made by one individual using emotions, right?
Mhm.
So emotionally, I can take a decision, but then if I have a co-founder, right, my co-founder is going to keep my emotions on check, and he or she
Mhm.
is going to help me balance that out with logic and with rhyme and
Mhm.
reason and so on and so forth, right? So and yeah, so many reasons why there should be you should have one or more co-founders uh, for a
Mhm.
startup, right? So it is very critical, right? It is
Mhm.
very extremely critical, I think. I mean there are also examples of single founding large companies, right? I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
saying that, right? For example, I don't know if Byju's has a co-founder, right, or have ever had one, right? We never
Mhm.
get to hear about the other people, if at all they were there, right?
Mhm.
Similarly, for Oyo, we don't get to hear about other founders of
Yeah, yeah.
Oyo, right? We only hear about. So I don't know. I mean, I've not checked out, but I'm guessing that they were not. They didn't have co-founders, right? So
Mhm.
there are enough examples, but there are like 100 times more examples of companies that have had more than one founding team members, right?
Mhm.
So it's always good, I would say, right? There's no I wouldn't say
Mhm.
there's any reason why you should not have a co-founder, right? Or co-founders, right? So number one, right? So that's
Mhm.
always good to have, right? The second most important thing, I would say, like, you don't go out in the world looking for a co-founder. That's completely the wrong way to do it, right? You
Mhm.
don't, like, it's like one ad, right? I think it's a Jeevan Sati ad, right? The father of the girl kind of
Mhm.
goes around trying to wear the hat on top of prospective grooms, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's that's
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely not the way you go finding
Mhm.
a co-founder, right? So in fact, I mean, I would say quite the opposite, right? Uh, you don't look for a co-founder, right? It
Mhm.
it would happen automatically, right?
Okay.
Uh, right,
Mhm.
you have to be out there in the open talking about your idea, talking about your vision, talking about
Mhm.
um, the problem, the magnitude of the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And the interesting journey that lies ahead, right? And the magnitude of the problem it's going to solve for somebody, and the business
Mhm.
opportunities for it. And you will find somebody who uh, is as crazy as you, right, and is
Mhm.
as interested as you to solve that same problem, right, and they want to be a part of it, right? So
Mhm.
so it should be a natural fit, right? You don't go, I mean, for example, I don't you can't put it on your project plan and say, hey, next 2 months I'm going to go find a co-founder, right? I mean, that's not how it should work, right? it
Mhm.
should it should happen automatically. It should be a symbiotic a spark that should
Yeah,
happen,
yeah.
rather than you force fit something into it, right? So that's not going to last for long, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
can work out, right, but it might not last for long, because I mean, maybe both of you got carried away by the moment and both of you decided to join
Mhm.
hands, but then 2 months down the line, when the you're hitting a rough weather, or you're flying through
Mhm.
the storm, you'll probably the relationship is going to
Yeah.
break loose, right?
Like
That's
expectation matching also, I guess that plays a key role in that, right?
right. So and it's always ideal for
Mhm.
you to collaborate with somebody who you knew from the past, right? It's
Mhm.
always better to uh, work within your own network, right?
Mhm.
Within family, within friends, within ex colleagues, or current colleagues, right?
Mhm.
uh, or I mean, within the network, right, to find somebody who could match with you, right?
Mhm.
Because again, it's a rough weather, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
and this relationship itself is actually going to be formed. uh, I mean, you could form this relationship on day one, but then day two itself you might actually have rough weather, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if there was no bonding before, if there's
Mhm.
no level of understanding before uh, two people became co-founders, it's going to be again very brittle, right? The
Mhm.
relationship is going to be very brittle, right? So it's ideal to have some kind of a prior relationship
Mhm.
before,
Yeah, yeah.
some kind of a prior mutual trust before,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay.
Before two
Mhm.
people kind of decide to become co-founders for each other, right? And I was
Mhm.
fortunate enough to have somebody like that come and join me as a
Mhm.
co-founder in GoFloaters, right? And again, it
Mhm.
didn't happen. We didn't force it. In fact,
Yeah, yeah.
Srivachan, who's my co-founder, we both started our professional journeys together. So we almost go back 18 years, 19 years.
Mhm.
So I've known him for 19 years now. We've played
Mhm.
cricket together. We've worked on projects together. We've done overnights,
Mhm.
sleepless overnights together, working on the same project. getting scolding from the same project manager. We've kind of
Mm-hmm.
gone through so many situations, and we've collaborated after both of us got some bit of
Mm-hmm.
experience. We have collaborated on multiple things after that, right? And we've always been in touch with each other, irrespective of whether we were working with each other or not, right? So it kind of helped
Mm-hmm.
when and also like we didn't pick up I didn't pick up the phone and say, hey Srivatsan, do you want to come and join me as a co-founder, right? So when Srivatsan
Mm-hmm.
wanted to jump out of his career and he wanted to explore entrepreneurship, he just was talking to me saying, hey, I'm also thinking about doing something. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
your experience. Tell me what is it like. So we were casually chatting, and over 2.5 months,
Mm-hmm.
we just realized that we both were meant to kind of work on the same problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so even though I knew him before, he knew me before, we didn't decide to become co-founders like
Mm-hmm.
on the first meeting, right? It took us 2.5 months to kind of realize that both of our journeys were meant to
Yeah,
be
compatible and stuff.
I mean, were meant to be the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's the I would say that's the ideal
Mm-hmm.
state, right? Then and obviously a lot of startups where their college, I mean, hostel buddies
Mm-hmm.
become founders, and also a lot of good stories about it. And because there's a prior trust between the two of you, or between the
Mm-hmm.
group of people, there's a prior relationship, there's a prior strong
Yeah.
commitment to each other. You look out for each other, you look out for the other person, and all that. A lot of that kind of
Mm-hmm.
cements the relationship of founder co-founder also, right? So that's the ideal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the only piece of advice I would say is like, don't go looking out for a co-founder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to this event and say, hey, I'm going to find a co-founder from this event and come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of events that do speed dating of founders and all that. I don't believe in such events, because
Yeah.
you don't speed date a co-founder, right? So it doesn't work that way, right? So I mean, I may be
Mm-hmm.
wrong as well, but this is my opinion.
Like great, because like, I like ask you one more question about this is, have you ever been through like setbacks like firing a person, and like that that was like sort of an emotional setback to you, firing an employee?
Yeah, unfortunately, we had to do that once, in the history, in my entire history of building teams, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had to do that, right? So and that's another thing that I think every entrepreneur has to be uh, willing to do, right?
Yeah.
Or has to be ready to do, right? And willing to do as well, because like, um, I mean, the company's interest comes above all,
Yes,
right? The
above all.
startup's interest comes above all, right? I mean, you could personally be uh, very bonded to to
Mm-hmm.
that team member, or the team member. I mean, that team member might have hundreds of reasons why they're doing
Mm-hmm.
certain things the way they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and all that, right? So, but at the same time, uh, you have to be ready to do that. And I personally had to do it once,
Mm-hmm.
very recently. In fact, I would say it was not a easy decision,
Yeah,
right?
it's not.
Uh,
I've been
but
through that.
then, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then
Mm-hmm.
once you kind of put the company's interest ahead of everything else, then it kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. There's no other way to
Yes.
do it, right? Having said that, I think
Mm-hmm.
uh, obviously you try to avoid that situation, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically in an early stage of a startup, uh, y- it's better to spend months to recruit somebody,
Mm-hmm.
rather than recruit somebody, or recruit in a quick sprint, and
Yeah.
then figure out that the person was not a good fit for your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, me and my co-founder have jokingly said that we've screened like,
Mm-hmm.
we've become more stringent than an IIT JEE exam, right? So we've kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
screened so many
Mm-hmm.
resumes, spoken to so many people before recruiting, and in spite of that, we had to fire somebody, right? So that's the reality.
Yeah, so like moving on to the next question, as we are on the topic of hiring. So if you're in the position of like, if you want to hire somebody, if somebody has come, so what are the key qualities you want to look for in that person? Let's say the job for that is, let's say a coding job. What are the key qualities you need for that person like to join GoFloaters?
See, coding is the easier part, right? So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
where you can actually measure the skill level of a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the aptitude of a person. I mean, so certain roles have very specific measurement uh, uh, KPIs, right? You can definitely measure somebody whether they're good coder or not, and you can look
Mm-hmm.
at projects, right? But that's the easy part. I would say, I mean, hiring for a developer is the easy part, right?
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
hiring for somebody who's going to take a leadership position in your team,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or who's going to be a head of, let's say, a division, like a head
Mm-hmm.
of sales or head of marketing or head of something else, right? Who's going to
Mm-hmm.
kind of be the champion of your vision, right? Or champion of the
Mm-hmm.
company's vision is a lot more difficult to hire, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I'm going to change your question, right? I'm not going to answer for a coder, because I think a lot of people would figure out how to hire a coder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a very measurable thing, right? You can,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, I mean, since you've asked, I'll even say this, right? So what we do is, like, we don't, I mean, at GoFlows, we don't look at resumes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't look at pedigrees in terms of which college they've gone to, what they passed out with, which school they
Mm-hmm.
went to. I mean, none of that. I mean, how many projects that they worked on before, right? What
Mm-hmm.
roles that they had. I mean, none of that actually matters. All we do is, like, we kind of have a conversation with
Mm-hmm.
with that individual who's applying for the job, understand their aspirations, understand what they want to do with their own lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they want to achieve with their own lives, what's their inner calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then see if that there, hey, can GoFloaters be that avenue through which they can achieve that inner calling, right? Can
Okay.
they achieve their aspirations through GoFloaters,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if GoFloaters can be the conduit for that,
Mm-hmm.
that person is going to be associated with GoFloaters. He's going to put his or her heart and soul into it, because they're also getting something out of it. They don't see this
Mm-hmm.
as a job, right? And obviously we look at people who look at who want to be part of the startup experience, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people apply and say, hey, um, they're applying or they're switching jobs just to get a jump in their salaries, right? Obviously, that's a strict no for us, right? If
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
applying for a position at GoForce because you want to get a hike in your salary, or you want to call yourself with a more glorious designation, um, because they could have been called a programmer analyst before, but then they're going to be called
Mm-hmm.
possibly head of engineering, right? So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's not why we would recruit you, right? If that's the reason why you're joining, right? And obviously there are easy ways for you to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what's the reason why they are joining, why they're applying for, why somebody's applying for a job at your startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the easy part, right? So the more tough part, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, right? The tougher part
Mm-hmm.
is, like, um, is somebody having the aptitude, is
Mm-hmm.
somebody having equal interest in this company succeeding,
Mm-hmm.
is that somebody going to go, uh, come what may, is going to go the extra mile
Mm-hmm.
to kind of ensure that the startup succeeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, we are recruiting for somebody slightly more senior, and
Yeah.
in roles that are not as easily definable, like a developer, right? So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, sales is very difficult for you to kind of measure, right? I mean, somebody could
Mm-hmm.
have sold toothpaste before exceedingly well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that they're going to come and change the game for your startup, right?
Yeah.
So, or somebody could have done something in a similar industry before really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I mean, somebody, so for example, a digital marketer, if they had
Mm-hmm.
3 lakhs a month budget of digital marketing, they could have done wonders in
Yeah.
a larger company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a startup does not have 3 lakhs of digital marketing funds, right?
Yeah.
You have probably 3,000 rupees of fund a month, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the same digital marketer could miserably fail when they're not given the resources to
Yeah.
operate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you need the digital market to be a lot more feet on street. I mean, to be a lot more agile, to be a lot more nimble, to be
Mm-hmm.
a lot more out of the box thinking, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
creative in kind of using the meager resources that you have to deliver maximum value, right? So
Yeah.
so you kind of have to look at various other aspects of uh, uh, is a person, and again, here too,
Mm-hmm.
what is their aspiration, what is their journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is an achievement for them, what do they want to achieve with their own
Mm-hmm.
lives 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? And can that be done through your startup, right? Because if you don't answer that question for them,
Mm-hmm.
then they lose that interest.
Interest.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
after some time, right? They'll the shine or the sugar coat on top of the medicine would go away, and then they'll only see the bitter
Mm-hmm.
taste at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So kind of looking at whether the journeys can align, whether they have the
Mm-hmm.
aptitude, whether they have the interest, they are also bought into the vision
Mm-hmm.
equally well, whether they understand where you what is it to be
Mhm.
in this journey, right? Are they quick thinkers, right? Are they analytical thinkers, right?
Mhm.
Are they people who are not crumbling under pressure, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you put them in a tough situation, can they kind of respond back to you, and so on, so forth? It kind of
Oh
look,
yeah.
so basically,
Mhm.
you look at a lot more softer aspects of the person
Mhm.
than measurable aspects of the person. Like,
Technical
hey,
ones.
yeah, this guy has led a sales team of 100 people before, so
Mhm.
he was awarded the best sales manager by some. All of that
Mhm.
doesn't matter when, because you're not going to give them 100 member sales team,
Yeah.
right? They're
Mhm.
going to be the single person. They're going to be out on the street and do this themselves, right?
Yeah.
So all of that, you kind of have to look at it
Yeah.
to do that. And
Mhm.
then what we also do is, like, we give anybody and everybody. So we in fact interview.
Mhm.
There are multiple levels of interview. So first, somebody else in the team will speak to the person.
Mhm.
Then my co-founder would speak to him. Then I would speak
Mhm.
to him, him
Mhm.
or her. Sorry, I don't want to be gender biased here, but
Yeah.
uh,
Sure. No
so
problem.
so
Mhm.
right. So
Mhm.
him or her,
Mhm.
and okay, I should probably say this. So GoFloaters is 70% women, by the way. So uh,
That's
so
great, man.
uh, I mean, so we're kind of heavily tilted towards women employees, right? Anyway,
Mhm.
so we go through multiple series of interviews and multiple series of discussions.
Mhm.
Wherever possible, we try to do in-person meetings and discussions, and conversations. Rather, I wouldn't say interviews, but more conversations.
Conversations.
And then we
Mhm.
give an assignment to. So once we are fairly certain that there is some spark in this person,
Mhm.
we kind of give them an assignment, right? A stretch assignment.
Okay.
Hey, this is what you should do. Come back to us with a presentation, or come back to us with a proposal, or come back to us with an idea, or come back to us with a design, or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
In next 2 days, and present it back to us, right? So that helps us in, number one,
Mhm.
understanding whether that person understood what GoFloaters is all about, right?
Mhm.
uh, Number two, it helps us understand whether they understood their role clearly or not,
Mhm.
right? And number
Yeah.
three, it helps us understand whether they were able to think on their feet, and think creatively,
Mhm.
think outside the box, and come up with something that's going to work for us, right? With the constraints that we set aside for them, right?
Oh.
and
Yeah.
and number four, it also, if they run away because we gave them a stretch assignment and they run away from that, then we know that
Mhm.
they can't take pressures. So if somebody
Yeah.
comes and says, hey, I had tough day at office, I couldn't spend 2 hours at this, boss, I mean, if you
Yeah.
can't take 2 hours to for a job, for a dream job, right? You're not going to be
Mhm.
able to take 24 hours for anything else, right? So
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, so those kind of things is what we look for.
Like adding value is great. And like one question I had is, a lot of people have varying opinions on this. That some people say that you should treat your employees like they are your family. Personally, I sort of don't agree on that, because in a family nobody is paid for doing something, right? And a lot of people have varying opinions. What's your opinion on this topic, like employees as a family?
um it's a tough one, I would say. Again, again, this is my personal, it's an opinion,
Yeah,
right? So I could be wrong, I
sure.
could be right. See, as a startup, one, you need
Mm-hmm.
people to act, to be perpetual machines on their own, right? So in a startup, you can't give people tasks, right? You need to
Yeah.
set them on missions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Soundarya, here is your responsibility, right? I'm not going to look at this any after. I've entrusted you with this responsibility. Now this is your baby, and you have to run
Mm-hmm.
with this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you have to, when you need when you need to do something like that, right? You need to have extreme amount of trust built
Yeah.
with
Mm-hmm.
people, right? You can't always like, you can't be that boss out
Yeah.
there and say, and be on the shoulders, breathing down the neck, and say, hey, what happened to this, right? I told
Oh.
you to do this
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, and you've not delivered it today, right? That's not how you can deal with people in a startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a huge trust built within the team, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying founders and team members, but within team members as
Within
well,
team
right?
members. Mm-hmm.
So that trust can only be built, right? That bonding and trust can only be built when there's little bit of I mean, this bonding within the team, right? All of the team members have to realize that they are in the same boat, right? If even
Yeah.
one is caught sleeping, uh, the entire boat is going to sink, right?
Hmm.
It's not
Yes.
just them, right? The entire boat is going to sink, right? And even if one, it's like the Onam festival in Kerala, right, where you have a long boat and everybody's kind of on the oars, and everybody is rhythmically oaring towards winning the race, right? So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
startup is like that, right? You Everybody has to be in sync, and everybody has to know their job.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to know the I mean, end point of the journey, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody has to kind of be on the lookout to help somebody else out, right? And that can happen only when uh, trust and respect is built,
Oh.
right,
Mm-hmm.
within team members and for the founders and all that, right? So in some occasions, I might just say, hey Soundarya, this is what we're going to do from next month, right? If Soundarya does not
Mm-hmm.
trust me enough or does not have a respect enough for me, she's going to always doubt my decisions, right? Or she's always going to doubt, hey, this guy is just smoking weed and just asking me to do something, but I don't believe this guy, right? Right. So that can't be the case, right? So
Mm-hmm.
right, at the same time, right, at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you have to make a lot of tough decisions in a startup,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to, and you can't say yes to everything. You can't. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
your team members can also not say yes to whatever you say, right? So there has to be a healthy conflict always within the team, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And people should not fear to come out and say, hey, this is wrong, right? Or I have a better way to do this, right? People should not say, hey, this is what uh, so and so in the
Mm-hmm.
company said, so we just have to blindly do it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's not what you can expect to do, right? So you have to. So I completely agree with you that you can't be as cozy as family members, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, uh, you can't be like a
Very
complete
stringent. Mm-hmm.
opposite of a command control kind of a model, right? Where you
Yeah.
kind of,
Mm-hmm.
right, I thou shall say and thou shall, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I shall say and thou shall obey, right? That's not going to work as well, right?
Autocracy doesn't work in a startup.
Yeah, so you have to have a
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a good balance, right? uh, right, in kind of doing something, right? So so that's it's a relationship that has to mature on its own, right? So it kind of
Mm-hmm.
has to build over time. So I neither is an answer, right? Being family is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
an answer. Being a command control is not an answer. So there's something in between that you need to figure out
Mm-hmm.
with each other, right? And the other thing that we do is like, see, everybody within the team has to have respect on anybody else that is, I mean, who's doing
Mm-hmm.
something, right? So I if I'm a developer in the team, I could say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
these guys don't understand me, this marketing team does not understand me, they don't know how what I'm going through to do something, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
sales team should not say this marketing team doesn't know what their job, and so that you can't have frictions with the team.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in a startup, it's
Mm-hmm.
always better to kind of expose everybody to every kind of aspect of the job, right? So, for example, Soundira has done sales, right? I have done sales. I have done
Mm-hmm.
software development. I have done marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had my developers to pick up calls from customers or man the chat and
Mm-hmm.
take customer service requests, right? And solve that. Right? I've made developers to meet our partners or onboard
Mm-hmm.
partners and all that, right? So, in a startup, well, number one, you're forced to do that because you have 5 people, and
Mm-hmm.
within the 5 people, you have to figure out how to run the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then by doing this, it also, each person in the team also develops a huge amount of respect for the other person because they know
Mm-hmm.
what it takes to do somebody else's job, right? They know what is to be in somebody else's shoes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that helps a lot because then you kind of know that you're not the only guy who's kind of
Yeah, yeah.
burning the midnight oil, right? There are other people in the team who are also uh, trying to do their best to take the startup across.
Okay, like great. Like I have another question because like taking GoFloaters into consideration, like I'm based in Mumbai and there are a lot of freelancers here, right? So what like there are a lot of cities like that. So what is the next city to target? Like where are you, planning to put GoFloaters? Like what's your plan?
Sure. So the plan is to certainly expand into other cities of India, right? The four cities that we are currently in, which is Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Coimbatore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have quite a bit of work to do in these four cities itself, right?
Yeah,
And some of our plans have been set back by the current situation as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
so there's so much more to do with these four cities, right? And but beyond this, we certainly looking at Mumbai, Pune, NCR,
Mm-hmm.
Kochi, Calcutta, and these kind of cities, right? So a mix of both tier two and tier one cities where uh, either freelancing is actually picking up, or remote working is picking up,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a lot of talent out there that's looking at setting up startups, or they're kind of
Mhm.
startup ecosystem is booming, or
Mhm.
SMBs are booming in those cities we're looking at. And in general, where real estate is becoming exorbitantly expensive, travel
Yes. Mhm.
across the city is becoming a challenge, right? I mean,
Mhm.
uh, a lot of these factors, right? So we're kind of looking at every city that kind of matches this kind of criteria is something which will be in our target in the future. But again, certainly Mumbai, certainly Pune, certainly NCR, certainly Calcutta,
Mhm.
certainly Kochi. In what order, I don't know, but very soon you'll see these cities also.
Right, hoping for that. So like I have one other question. So I'm a student, right? So there are a lot of like a lot of people who are like, sort of hating on their education system and saying that it's crap and stuff. And I really wanted to ask you, did Indian education help you in any way of your startup?
Um, okay, so I'm yes in many ways, no in many ways as well, right? So I graduated to be a civil engineer, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I am doing some nothing related to civil engineering as I speak today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it did help me build analytical capabilities. It did help me build logical thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
It did help me build a solution oriented approach, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got to solve a problem, right? And being an engineer, you kind of solve problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what engineers do. So you kind of do a lot of things there, right? See, I mean, my here is my belief or my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, every stage of life, if you kind of do this well, it gives you one key that it helps you open the next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you open the next door, that key becomes obsolete, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Then you search for the next key, right? So my schooling gave me a key to join college, right? A good college, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I had a good rank, I got a good college, I studied well, and that gave me a key to
Mm-hmm.
join the corporate world, right? And gain some experience from there, right? And that gave me a key to do something else in my life, right? So you can't kind of go back and say, hey, I did something, I studied something 8 years back, it's not helping me now, right? It most likely will not, right? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cases, you kind of learn something that you apply.
Mm-hmm.
There's an applied knowledge and there's a learned knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Most of
Mm-hmm.
the times you don't apply the knowledge that you learn that is specific to
Mm-hmm.
that particular domain, but then there's a lot of applied knowledge that you apply.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're able to apply in many places, right? So that's my belief, right? So I don't look back and say, what was that worth, right? Why did I
Mm-hmm.
study so hard to get into that college, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so I needed to have done that, right? But again, like I said, at the same time, if you ask me today, formal education, there are so many other ways to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, right? I mean, there's Udemy, there is a script, there is like so many ways in which you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we used to stand in the line for one book in the library, right? And
Yeah.
we used to
Mm-hmm.
rotate and say, hey, this week we'll have this book, and next week you return it, I'll be behind you, I'll take that book again.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait for you don't have to do any of that
Yeah.
today, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just go to Audible and then just download the Audible book and then start reading, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
order the book, right? So anyway, so the point is like, and there's so many online courses from Coursera and from Udemy,
Mm-hmm.
Upstart, and so many things, right? So anyway, the learning has become a lot more
Yeah.
non-linear today,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be an engineer to learn business related skills, right? You can be a student and still learn to kind
Mm-hmm.
of business skills, right? So and whatever you wish to do, right? So that way I think things have
Mm-hmm.
things have become so much better, and you can be so much more selective in what you want to
Mm-hmm.
learn, and then do it. So yeah, I think there's a place for everything. uh,
Mm-hmm.
but if you ask me, like I said before as well,
Mm-hmm.
when somebody is applying for a job, in fact, I don't know anybody's in my team. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anybody's degrees. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know anybody's college of graduation.
Mm-hmm.
uh, it doesn't make sense for me to kind of I mean,
Mm-hmm.
measure a candidate on which degree they have and which
Yeah.
college they go to and all that. So I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. And so is my co-founder also, right? He
Mm-hmm.
also doesn't give a lot of weightage to that, right? So it kind of doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, we have kind of had students, we've had fresher of college,
Mm-hmm.
we've had like a lot of people who come and join us and who do probably sometimes better than than the people with better
Counterparts.
pedigree. Yeah.
Like there's this quote which is like the useless ones always introduce themselves with the degree, the colleges, but the useful ones do not need an introduction. Like this kind of works in a lot of
Yeah.
cases.
I would probably add to that quote, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of polished diamonds out there, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, sometimes uh, I mean, the point that you said about the useful ones don't need an introduction, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you, as a founder of a company, will have to invest enough on somebody.
Hmm.
You get a feeling that, hey, this guy can do something amazing, right? You have to
Hmm.
just polish the edges off, and he or she would
Hmm.
become a sparkling member of your team, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
sometimes you have to help the talent emerge from that dust, right? Sometimes you also have to do that. It's not just that you find somebody like brilliant on the
Hmm.
first interaction and then you hire them. Sometimes you get a you some kind of gut feel tells you that, hey, there's something in this person,
Hmm.
and you just have to figure it out over a period of time.
Yeah, like the way you speak, I really think you're like a spiritual person, and I'm sort of deviating from the topic. Do you believe in destiny?
I believe in making my own destiny.
Yeah, that's great. Because like I believe this destiny is the easiest way of saying that this didn't work out. Believe it was written like that. That's sort of like my opinion. Anyway, so we're like sort of near the end of the podcast. Last, I want you to give some tips to emerging entrepreneurs and like students who are trying to do freelance and stuff, and then
Sure,
we'll end this podcast.
sure. See, the first, I mean, I'll probably split between entrepreneurs and freelancers, right? So for entrepreneurs, um, it's easy to don't, it's easy to get carried away by the fact that you're now an entrepreneur and you're building you have a business, you have a title and things like that, right? So that's you celebrate it for one day, right? And then the next day you have to be doing your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing what it makes to build a company, right? So it's that's number one, right? So I see a lot of people kind of just jump into this just for the sake of calling themselves the founder of some company and put on LinkedIn and brag about it, right?
Yeah,
That's number one, right?
it's the
So
glamour
number
of.
two,
Mm-hmm.
the glamour of it, right? Then number two, and then a lot of people underestimate the troubling times and the hard journey that you have to go through as an entrepreneur, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the glamour of it kind of overshadows that, and then they kind of realize that after a few months, and then they kind of feel sorry for that, right? So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
better to kind of know this before you get into that, right? So that's number one, and hopefully this podcast is helping some of them who are
Mm-hmm.
listening to this to kind of
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
know that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's number one, right? Number two, I also see, and this is something that in spite of having 18 years of experience, I made this mistake in my first startup, right? And I don't want anybody else to make this mistake, and which is why I'm proudly saying
Mm-hmm.
that my first startup was a failure, right? And I learned enough from it to not make the same mistakes with my second startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to get fixated on the idea. It's very easy to get fixated on. I mean, you have a brilliant idea that pops into your head, and then you kind of get so much sold over it, right? That
Mm-hmm.
everything else seems to be non-existent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of go full steam ahead and trying to build that idea into something that that's like has hands and legs and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's absolutely the wrong way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and the other wrong thing about this is like you kind of once you get the idea, you go deep into a burrow and then start building that product or start building
Mm-hmm.
that software or start building that service, right? And 6 months later you come out and say, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you want the world to kind of embrace you and then hug you and buy your product and pay you and all that, right? That again doesn't
Oh.
happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I think uh, as an entrepreneur, you kind of uh, this is a little bit of an oxymoron, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't, as an entrepreneur, you don't your journey has to be leading you to the quickest point of failure, right? You should be optimizing your journey to fail as quickly as possible rather than to succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because success can take a hell lot of time, right? I mean, we still read
Mm-hmm.
about a lot of startups, I mean, unicorns that are still not profitable, right? They're still
Yeah.
burning money like hell, right? I mean, is that success? I mean, it's for everybody to kind of decide, right? But all I'm
Mhm.
saying is that success can take a lot more longer than you think, right?
Mhm.
But you should optimize it for failure, right? You should look at various ways in which your idea can fail, right? So
Mhm.
that you can quickly learn from that and pivot and then do something that can potentially succeed, right? So I would say, like, if you have if you get an idea on day one, on day two you should be validating that idea, going to the market, telling them, hey, this is an idea that I have, here is a prototype that I've built, or here is an MVP that I've built.
Mhm.
uh, does this solve your problem, right? um, and do that, right? So do it very iteratively. Don't try to I've had enough. I've actually met with a lot of people who are building products for 8 months,
Mhm.
9 months, and then but then they've not spoken to a single customer, right, ever, right?
Mhm.
And hey, once this is built, everybody will come falling and buying my software or buying my product. That doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's the
Mhm.
second part of entrepreneurship, right? The third part of entrepreneurship, which is, or third tip, which is more contextual to the current situation that we are in,
Mhm.
uh, right? Funding is going to be even more difficult uh, uh, now and in the
Mhm.
future, right? And at
Yeah. Yeah.
least for a near future, right? And for the next year at least,
Mhm.
fundraising is not going to be that easy, right?
Mhm.
So it's better to kind of do things smartly. It's better to not flamboyantly spend on things that don't matter, right?
Mhm.
That are not going to add value to your startup. Spend the money that you have very wisely, very smartly. Spend on things that are going to give you immediate to short term
Mhm.
benefits, rather than building doing things that are going to matter only like 3 years down the line, right? uh,
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense. So kind of use your resources wisely and sparingly. I wouldn't say sparingly, but smartly, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
you have to spend on something, spend on it, right? But then that should give you value right away, right? Don't spend on things that are just boosting the vanity metric of your
Mhm.
startup, or boosting the uh, image of your startup, but then you're not delivering any value, right? So
Mhm.
I think those are three quick things that I would want to say to any aspiring entrepreneur, right? Or somebody who's into the entrepreneur, but who's just
Mhm.
entered it a few months back, right? Um, Now coming to freelancers, I think uh, there's going to be a huge. Uh, and again, GoFloaters uses like freelancers heavily, right? So I
Mhm.
think freelancing and gig economy is not going anywhere, right? So this is the right moment in the history of time
Mhm.
to actually be a freelancer, to kind of uh, be your own. Have all levels of freedom, right? Have
Mhm.
the freedom of what you work on, who you work for, and what you work, right? So all of that freedom you could have. So it's a great time to be a freelancer,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But being a freelancer is also being like an entrepreneur, right? Because you got to sell
Yeah.
yourself, you got to sell your skill, right? you
Mhm.
can't you can't just create a profile page on Behance and then say, hey, I'm a freelancer, and you have to come and talk to me and engage me, right? You have to sell
Mhm.
yourself. You have to kind of do few things that an entrepreneur also does, right?
Mhm.
So and uh, uh, you have to be, again, like an entrepreneur, you have to be nimble, in the sense that today you might be a developer and you might know Python, right? But then
Mhm.
and Python might be the hottest thing on the planet right now for data science. But then just in 6 months, it may not be the hottest thing on the planet, right?
Mhm.
Um, so things are going to be dynamic and things are going to change. So you have to constantly. Nobody's going to come and tell you that you have to reskill yourself in doing things, right? You as a
Mhm.
freelancer, you have to have control on, or you have to have a clear uh, plan laid out on how you're going to upskill yourself and being making yourself relevant, right, to others at any point in time, right? So that's going to be super important for a freelancer to do, right? and
Mhm.
um and I think that's pretty much it. Some thoughts that I want to share.
This was a great time speaking with you. So we'll be coming up with new podcasts soon. And if you like this podcast, hit that like button and share this with your friends. And don't forget to install the GoFloaters app. Until we meet again, peace out.